So Horikoshi has not only done it once, but twice. He has made me love terrible characters. But today we're going to talk about how Bakugo went from one of my most hated characters to one of my absolute favorite in the series. So I've always hated the bully type character. And Bakugo was one of the worst bullies I've ever seen, and I instantly hated him. I hate people with a superiority complex. And Bakugo was the biggest example of this. He always thought he was better than everyone around him and then bullied the living hell out of Deku for like no reason. And he was like bullying a kid without powers, so that's kind of like the equivalent of bullying someone that's handicapped. Not cool, Bakugo. Bakugo was responsible for Izuku's nickname, Deku, which in Japanese means useless, stupid, or dumb. That's just so fucked. The entirety of their childhood, Bakugo would always bully and demean Deku for no reason. And when Deku would always try to reach out his hand to help him, Bakugo felt like it was a sign of disrespect or insinuating that Bakugo was weak. And for the first few seasons of My Hero, I hated Bakugo. I could not stand to see him on screen, and I just hated his arrogant personality. I think he finally started to change for me around season 3 with the Forest Training Camp arc. When Bakugo was kidnapped by the League of Villains, it seemed like Bakugo was about to switch sides. But surprisingly, he stuck to his guns and was fighting the villains tooth and nail. He always idolized All Might like Deku, and he wouldn't let anything else deter him from his path of becoming a great hero. And he even swallowed his pride when he was fighting the League of Villains to accept help from Deku and the others to escape so All Might could actually fight All for One without worrying about any casualties. These were very small things that Bakugo did to show some kind of growth, or at least that he was not as self-centered as I thought he was, but it was the conversation he had with Midoriya after the events of All Might versus All for One that really got me rethinking Bakugo. Now, Bakugo isn't dumb by any means, and he realized that All Might gave Deku his power. For their whole lives, Deku has always been chasing after Bakugo, but now for the first time, Bakugo is chasing after Deku and is wanting the same attention that All Might is giving him. And he is also dealing with the grief of being the reason why All Might's career ended. If Bakugo never got captured, All Might would not have lost his powers. Bakugo is so lost and confused and hurt, the only thing he can think about is beating Deku. If he beats Deku, that means he beat the person that All Might chose to be his successor, and he doesn't feel like he's behind Deku anymore. And honestly, I can kind of sympathize with where Bakugo is coming from after ending All Might. That level of sadness and grief is honestly very overwhelming. And Bakugo is trying to deal with it the best way he can. After Bakugo wins against Deku, All Might shows up to give Bakugo some much needed closure. And it's at this moment that we see a very pivotal change in Bakugo. All Might explains that both Bakugo and Deku hold one half of being a perfect hero. Deku with trying to save everybody, and with Bakugo trying to win. But if you combine those aspects of being a hero, you get a full, complete hero. So All Might acknowledges Bakugo and what he is doing, and it gives Bakugo some needed closure to accept Deku and make a pivotal change in their ongoing relationship. Bakugo recognizes Deku as an actual hero now and no longer as some kid he used to bully. And it's at this point that Bakugo recognizes Deku as an actual rival for him. This is where Bakugo's character changes for the better, and I actually start to respect him. He starts being nice to Deku, well, nicer than before, but the most important thing is he respects Deku as a hero now. During the Paranormal Liberation War, Bakugo was fighting alongside Deku and was backing him up the whole way. When Deku knew that Shigaraki was looking for him and Deku took off by himself, Bakugo followed right behind him because he knew what Shigaraki was after and he knew that he had to protect Deku. As the only person that knew Deku's secret, it was up to him to help out Deku where no one else would. And then the moment that cemented Bakugo as one of my favorite characters was when he sacrificed himself for Deku. During that whole fight with Shigaraki versus Deku, Bakugo was witnessing Deku destroy his body to take down Shigaraki. And Bakugo realized that Deku is sacrificing himself and pushing himself way harder than he should. And he's always been doing that. Bakugo now had a new sense of respect for the work ethic and the sacrifice that Deku always makes to protect others. We then also got a really good flashback to when Bakugo was teaching Deku how to fly, and he was talking to All Might about basically all the mistakes he made in his relationship with Deku. Bakugo talks about how Deku has always been selfless, and that was always a weird concept to Bakugo. So because of that, Bakugo would always push away Deku. But the real reason was because that was Deku's strength and Bakugo's weakness. And Bakugo couldn't understand his own weakness, so he pushed those thoughts and Deku aside. And Bakugo then wanted to train Deku as to atone for all the sins he's committed. And when he saw Shigaraki about to skewer Deku, Bakugo's body moved on its own. For the first time in the whole series, did Bakugo do something without thinking and for the sake of protecting someone and not just trying to win. It's really great because at the very beginning of the series, Deku rushed out to help Bakugo without thinking about his own safety, and finally, after so much time, Bakugo has finally caught up, and the episode and the chapter title were both called Bakugo Rising. But probably the greatest moment that showcased all of Bakugo's growth was after this war during Deku's vigilante arc, where Bakugo realizes that Deku is going down a path he cannot sustain, and it's up to him in class 1A to stop his friend. And for the first time, we actually see Bakugo asking for help of those around him and actually trusting the people in class 1A, because for the majority of the series, Bakugo always operated by himself and never asked for help from anyone else. But now he realizes that he can depend on those around him, and to be a hero and to be the heroes that they want to be, that they need to work together. And he is communicating that to Deku, who should have already known that. And hearing truth come from your childhood bully hits a little different because you actually have to listen to what they say. And it's at this moment that Bakugo has so much to talk to Deku about, and he starts off by apologizing. And I didn't know how much I needed this closure. For me to accept Bakugo, he has to accept and atone for the things he has done. And this is the first time he has ever apologized for any of the things he put Deku through. And he says sorry for everything in a beautiful speech, and then ends it by saying, you can't do everything alone. You need people around you, and whatever you can't do, rely on us to get it done. And I think that is one of the greatest displays of maturity in any shonen, to have a character like Bakugo admit that he was wrong and to actually apologize for the things he has done wrong, and to be a new support for Deku is honestly so beautiful. And his growth doesn't just end there. He keeps getting better and better. In the final war of the series, Bakugo goes up against Shigaraki while Deku got pulled into another battle. And Bakugo is doing his best to keep Shigaraki at bay, but Shigaraki is tanking every attack Bakugo is throwing at him. It gets to the point where Shigaraki breaks Bakugo's arm and says, you are boring me, and you are nothing more than Deku's best friend, and if I kill you, then it will cause a lot of damage to Deku. And Bakugo gets discouraged after hearing this. After his best attempts, Shigaraki just brushes him aside like he's nothing. And even though Bakugo is crying, he is analyzing Shigaraki's movesets. He is picking up on a characteristic that was exclusive to Deku and is now implementing it himself. Then Bakugo gets up and says, we have to win, right, Izuku? And then he speed blitzes Shigaraki and then starts predicting his movements just like Deku. And in this final moment of his fight, he realizes everything that Deku has been through. Now realizes the extreme pain that Deku has always been going through using One For All. He also realizes the importance of predicting and anticipating your opponent's every move. And he realizes that Deku has been doing this all along, and he finally realizes that maybe now he can stand with Deku. And then he has the most heart-wrenching final words. He says, Izuku, can I still catch up to you? Before he talks to the vestige of All Might, finally admits how much of a fan he is, and has a really good moment until Shigaraki kills him. But don't worry, he doesn't stay dead for long. I know this was a big complaint amongst fans that Bakugo should have stayed dead, and I agree to an extent, but at the same time, the way Horikoshi wrapped up Bakugo's character story was amazing, and I think him coming back really justified everything. So when All For One is about to kill All Might in front of Deku, that's when Bakugo reawakens with the help of Edgeshot, and him and Deku lock eyes. And honestly, in one of the greatest manga panels I've ever seen, Bakugo and Deku know exactly what to do. Bakugo heads towards Deku so Deku can launch him at All For One at top speed. And honestly, that was one of the craziest panels I saw, where everyone's hope was riding on Bakugo to save All Might. That was just so cool. Like, reading that panel, I got emotional. It was amazing. And then when he got to All For One and took off his arms and grabbed All Might, God, that was so good. And when Bakugo saved All Might, he restored faith in Deku, and then he said, we will win this. And the final fight with Bakugo versus All For One was epic. It was better than I could have ever imagined. I think it was the perfect way to end Bakugo's story. We first have All Might give Bakugo one of his arm attachments that attached itself to Bakugo's broken arm, which gives Bakugo some closure because not only was Deku given something, but now Bakugo was given something by All Might, the same hero that him and Deku both admired. And look how happy it makes Bakugo. The smile on his face is honestly so adorable. Bakugo is going through immense pain, but he is standing toe-to-toe with All For One. And he even says that he's the one to step in when the nerd can't handle it. And then we see Bakugo understanding his quirk and all the intricacies of his new power. It's very reminiscent of Deku studying and taking notes of all the quirks around him, which again shows Bakugo's growth and taking a page once again from Deku. And then Bakugo goes toe-to-toe with All For One and is fighting him on equal ground with stronger explosions than ever before, and thus aging All For One faster and faster. And it's kind of cool that Bakugo reminds All For One of the second user of One For All, the one that thwarted him the most. And in All For One's final attack against Bakugo, Bakugo declares that he'll no longer get in Izuku's way and is finally going to end this fight. And he finally ends the fight with a Hauser Impact, which is his signature move that has not worked on any of the big bads until now. But this moment is way more than just Bakugo taking out All For One. It is the full circle moment. Bakugo was the reason why All Might's career ended, and he always lamented himself for it, but now he is the reason why All Might is still alive. If it wasn't for Bakugo, All Might would have died right now. And this is really great writing from Horikoshi to give these characters their full circle moments and finally end their own individual stories. And Bakugo ends the fight with him putting his fist in the air like All Might did and says, "Izuku, go for it." And if you think he's done, he is not done. At the final fight against Deku versus Shigaraki, Bakugo is the last person to give Deku the final push he needs to end Shigaraki once and for all. At the end of it all, Bakugo is so sad that Deku might lose One For All that he starts crying. He wants to continue competing and being actual rivals with Midoriya for the rest of their careers. And I think Bakugo's growth and maturity is so amazing. He went from this bully character that I hated and couldn't stand to now an actual rival and friend of Deku. And he challenged all of his preconceived notions and ideas of weakness and grew from them. He didn't hide from the things he did, and he genuinely apologized to Deku for everything he did and strived to be better than what he once was, and now stands as an actual equal and friend to Deku. And I think that is the perfect way to end his character arc.